very special history. It competed in the 1995 Nürburgring 24-hour, which it won, the 1996 Spa 24-hour, which it won, and the 1997 Spa 24-hour, which it won. And this is the first time it's been back to Spa since it won the 1997 Spa 24 hours. Hi, my name is Matt Home. I'm the owner of this Bastos E36 320 Super Touring wagon. It's got a great history. It's a Bugatti car. It competed in the 1995 Nürburgring 24-hour, which it won, the 1996 Spa 24-hour, which it won, and the 1997 Spa 24-hour, which it won. These are the only 3 events it's done. And I think one of the only cars to have won the 3 24-hour races in its history. The car was absolutely original, the paintwork is original. We got hold of the car from Japan, it come out of a collection. We took the battery out of the fire extinguisher and it had an expiry date of 1997. The car still has the original Spa map from 1997 in it. It's a very technically advanced car for its age. It roughly weighs 950 kilos and has a power of about 280 horsepower. This is down somewhat from the sprint touring cars of the same period, probably 20-30 horsepower less. It's also got longer gearing for the endurance race. It's wonderfully balanced with 50-50 weight distribution and is a very, very solid car, but it's a joy to bring it back to Spa for the first time since 1997, and hopefully you get to see some of its action on track and a little bit of a tour around the car inside and outside.
So I'm Mark, I'm looking after this Bastos E36 Super Tourer car. It's obviously a very famous car. As you can see from the names on the car, it was driven by some very famous drivers back in the day. It is actually probably one of the best Super Tourer cars there is. I mean, it's got so much history. It's an absolute classic car. It really is. When you look at it, we'll go around the car. You look at the engineering side of it. It is an amazing piece of kit. Even now, you know, we have modern drivers that have been driving modern cars. They get in this car and they get out with a huge smile. So it's great, you know. And you can see how rewarding it is when they get out of the car also. And even for people watching the car going around, the noise is amazing, you know, it is an amazing car. So we'll walk around, we'll obviously show you what's what on the car and explain a bit more on it. So we'll come round to the front, to the engine, lift this up, and you can see from under the engine, it is, obviously this is an out-and-out factory car. So it was designed for obviously the top flight of touring cars. This is the endurance version of the Super Tourer. So as you can see, it's an engine obviously built by BMW Motorsport. As you can see, it's got obviously a lot of carbon work, the carbon cam cover, the carbon throttle bodies, the inlet manifold, the airbox. The whole thing is, you know, is built around motorsport within, you know, with a view. So you can see it also has, this is around 280 horsepower, whereas the sprint car engine would have been around 340 maximum. So this is a detuned version purely to get to the end of a 24-hour race, which it needs to. So if you look more closely here, it runs 8 injectors, so 4 inboard and 4 outboard. It runs what they call slide throttles, which gives you better response. The engine, obviously the response of the engine pickup is far better. As you can see, there's obviously a strengthening part here to strengthen the chassis, because obviously it needs to be as stiff as it can. You can also see from the top mounts, we have camber adjustment on the top mount. Even in the wet, it runs a huge amount of camber and cast. I mean, it literally is like a go-kart to drive. The brakes on it are obviously huge as well, for a reason. They did on the sprint cars, they run water-cooled brakes. This doesn't run water-cooled brakes because obviously it's an endurance car again, so it gives you some sort of feedback, the difference between endurance and the sprint cars. Now, obviously, it's based on a road car engine, but everything internal is totally different to a road car engine. Everything's a lot lighter, it's balanced to give better response. Obviously, it runs a motorsport ECU engine control unit, which is mapped with the the high octane fuel to get the optimum power out of the engine. It runs a 6-speed sequential gearbox, so basically you just pull the lever backwards to go up the gears and forwards to go down the gears. Obviously we'll go to that when we go to the inside of the car. So as you can see, I mean, the whole thing on this car is based around optimum performance, and it has to, because obviously back in the day they were competing against other manufacturers which also had amazing cars. But the BMW back in the day in 1995 when this was built, it was the car to beat. For me it is the ultimate motorsport vehicle. So if we obviously you can see there, we'll go around to the inside of the car and have a look in there and explain what's what, and you can see a bit more about it. So here we are at the inside of the car. So basically, again, the layout's very similar to a road car as far as the dashboard goes, but obviously there's extras been put on there, like the switch panel, which obviously, it has the lights, the high beam, it has cooling, which is obviously, that's there for the water-cooled brakes, if they run it, which they did on the sprint car. You have an interior fan, the fog lights. These are the fuel pumps, so you've got obviously the main fuel pump and then you've got a reserve fuel pump. This is the water pump that I was on about that controls the brakes, but obviously this car doesn't run it. This here is obviously the fuse panel. They are resettable. So for example, if a driver was out on track and for a light blue, what you do, it would obviously trip the fuse, but you can reset it inside the car, which is obviously all related to the driver. Here you've got the gear lever. It's a sequential 6-speed gearbox, so to change gear you go backwards to go up, and to go down you push it forward. So that's that's quite easy. And when you're on track, when you're going up the gears, the throttle is just flat. You don't have to let off because it has a what we call a shift cut, which cuts the ignition and allows you to change the gear, without obviously off the throttle. This little black knob here is the brake bias, obviously to adjust the brakes from front to rear. Now naturally, for example, if you're running in the dry and then it goes to wet, you would then turn this anti-clockwise to go more to the rear, so you take the braking away from the front, so obviously so you're not risk of locking the front brakes. These here are quite interesting. So this is the front and rear anti-roll bar. So the drivers can change the stiffness of the roll bar within the car. So literally to go full stiff, they go all the way forward. To go full soft, they go all the way backwards. So you can see that it's obviously hard and soft on there. So you can control the car basically from inside. So that's another great aid that this car, that BMW produced, was able to do. It's fully controllable by the driver inside. So you can imagine, if conditions change on the track during the race, they can change a lot of the car themselves rather than coming in and losing time in the pit lane. So that's very good. Obviously you've got the dash here, so I will just switch the ignition on. So the dash is now lit up. So here you have water temperature, oil pressure, oil temperature and fuel. Obviously that's low because the car's not running. You have battery voltage there, and then this dial here is the RPM gauge. This one here is your gear indicator. And this one here is your oil, so basically if that comes on, your low oil pressure. So that's quite, it's quite basic, but it tells you everything you need. Now, obviously this was an endurance car. Now, if you look up on the roof, you can see there's a map there of the last event he'd done, of the racetrack he'd done. Which basically that's just for the driver, just so he can have a look before the start of the race. If he just has to obviously work out where the track goes. So that's quite interesting. If you look at the back of the car, where the aerial goes, the radio system, there's obviously a bit of copper there. That's basically to try and stop any interference or any lightning strikes that can happen during the race. So they do that purely, for safety on the car. There are a lot of things around the car which obviously, if you look down here on the floor, That's a brake pressure sensor. So the engineers can register everything what the driver's doing on the car. So the brake pressure, it obviously goes onto the data system. Now, the whole car has sensors on it, so they know exactly what's going on with the pressures, fuel pressures, brake pressures, what the driver's doing in the car. So if there's a problem, they can get to the bottom of it reasonably quick, because they obviously they've got data on the car. If you go to the front of the car here, this is the ECU, which controls basically the engine. It's a BMW Motorsport unit that they've designed with Bosch that controls the whole car. Now, it is all remappable. You can change anything within the engine, but normally what happens when the engine comes from BMW, it's been built and dynoed, it literally is ready to go when it goes in the car. There is none of this, is it running, is it not? It is ready to go because it's been on the dyno for sort of 5 or 6 hours running. Now, obviously, BMW Motorsport back in the day when they run the cars, they would have had a data engineer with all the software. They would have controlled the whole data side of the car. So it's quite good, because if there's any problems, or if there's not a problem that a driver's not aware of, a data engineer can also see from the data that something's not quite right, and they can readjust it and recalibrate something. So that side is very good. So if you look here, it has what they call a line lock. So when they come to the start line, they can literally, that's like a handbrake. They hold the car on there, and when they let the clutch go, that goes down. The brakes, as I said, is what we call a bias adjustable pedal box. You can control it front to rear for the conditions that you're in. Now, obviously, conditions will change a lot during the 24-hour race. It's very rare that you'll start a 24-hour race in the dry and finish in the dry. You can get obviously dampness. It can go cold. So you have to change certain elements of the setup of the car. So you obviously got your brake bars, you've got your roll bars. So you're pretty flexible on what you've got. If you look down here, you've got what we call air jacks for the guys. That when the car comes in, they literally just put an air lance on the car, and it lifts the whole car up in the air to be able to change wheels. They are very, very useful and make things very quick. If you what we do, we go around to the back of the car to the boot area where the fuel tank is. As you can see in here, it's obviously a fuel tank. It's a 110 litre fuel tank, and it is a quick fill system. So you've got the filler hole here to fill the tank. This one is a breather. So back in the day, obviously they would have had a quick fill that goes on there, and this is a breather, so it gets the air out to allow the fuel to go in quicker. So that was a very, very quick system. Here we've got the fuel pumps. There's obviously 2 fuel pumps. It only runs one at a time, but obviously one's a backup one. Again, there's a pressure sensor here to show what fuel pressure it's running. Normally runs around 5 bar of pressure. If the pressure starts dropping because there's an issue with the fuel system, a leak or whatever, obviously this sensor then will flash up on the dash low fuel pressure, which would indicate that there's a problem. If the fuel pressure is low, it could be that we're running low on fuel. Now, this tank here is our reserve tank. That's a 5 litre tank. But what will happen if we're running low? It brings a light on the dashboard, which tells us we're running low. There is a reserve switch on the dash, which will then allow us to run on that. That's 5 litres, which will get you back to the pit lane. It's more than enough fuel to get you back. As you can see in here, in the back, behind the fuel tank, you have the anti-roll bar, the rear anti-roll bar, which is adjustable from inside the car. So you can change the size of the roll bar. The roll bar thicknesses are obviously changeable, different thicknesses. But if you look on the end, if you can see here, it's got the anti-roll bar blades. Now they rotate. So basically, if they're standing upright, that's in the full stiff position. If they're on their side, that's full soft position. So position-wise, you've probably got 6 different positions, from full soft to full stiff. It's a great way of doing it, obviously, from inside the car. Runs oil coolers for the diff and the gearbox to try and obviously, keep the oil temperatures down. I mean, a running temperature for the gearbox and diff would be around 110 degrees. If it starts getting hotter than that, then obviously the gearbox doesn't like it. So that's all controlled. Again, with the cooling of the engine, you've got a big radiator on the front. If you see around the front here, so you come down to the bottom, what they would do back in the day, they'd have what we call cooling blanks. So on a cold day, you would need to blank half of it off so you get the temperature up to, I mean, on the water, on track, you'd want to be running around 80, 85. If you're running down at 60, 65, the engine doesn't like it, so, because obviously it needs to be warm. So you would blank them off. So this side is the oil cooler, and that's the same thing. If it's really cold, you would put some blanking on there just to try and bring the oil temperature up, because you don't want the oil down at 60, 70. It needs to be more like sort of 90, 100. This side is the air filter side, so you can see they split. These are what they call kidney ducts. They split these, so one's for the oil cooling, one's for the airbox. As you can see, the airbox, obviously it comes in from the front, it's a huge airbox. It needs a lot of air. These engines need a lot of air, but that is also why they make so much noise, because the induction noise that they have. And this is one of the things, the main things about these cars, why people know them, because of, basically the general noise that they do make is fantastic. So for me, the Super Tourer era was the best, and even nowadays there's nothing quite like it. And this, again, for me, why this Bastos car is one of the best cars that was ever made. It is such an iconic car. It's a fantastic car with great results, and still to this day it's pleasing people. Every time it goes on track, people run to the car, they come and ask questions. It's just an amazing piece of kit.
Very privileged to bring the car back to Spa for the first time since 1997, and it's wonderful to get in here, fire it up, and bring the Ardennes Forest alive with such a unique sounding engine note. It's a fantastic circuit, mix of high speed corners, slow speed corners, undulation. It's really a unique place to be. It's a really unique circuit and a fantastic opportunity to bring some of the history back to the present.